Hello, my name is Dwight Pettit. I'm an attorney in Baltimore City and have been practicing here for 40 years. I handle civil rights law, I handle constitutional, criminal, personal injury. Recently I have just published a book entitled Under Color of Law. The book is a biography talking about my life and the fact of my involvement in the civil rights movement. The book basically starts off and revolves around the fact that I have been involved in three major civil rights cases as plaintiff and lawyer over the past since my childhood. The first being Pettit versus the Board of Education of Harford County, where my father brought the case to in fact desegregate the schools of Harford County. My attorneys being Thurgood Marshall, Jack Greenberg, Mrs. Juanita Jackson Mitchell, and Tucker Derrick. The second case is Pettit versus the United States, where I was counsel for my father, who in fact was abused and discriminated against for his bringing of my case in the U.S. District Court for school integration. The third is Pettit versus the Board of Law Examiners, which is a case against the Maryland Bar, which at that time was discriminatory in admitting African Americans at a very slow and unusual discriminatory rate. The book builds around these three cases, but it goes into a lot of the other issues of my personal practice. But the main theme that caused me to write the book was the story in relationship to my father, who asked me to write it while he was on his deathbed and tell our story. As I indicated earlier, I had the opportunity to go to undergrad, finish high school at Aberdeen High School, go to undergrad, and come out and go to law school and take his case to the second highest court in the nation, the U.S. Court of Claims. And we won that case, and the court in a 4-3 decision determined that he had been discriminated against and awarded him $100,000 back pay, and also awarded him all the privileges that went with the awarding of that promotion after 14 years of his being deprived. I had the opportunity to practice law thereafter, and the beautiful thing about that case, the opportunity to represent my father in that civil case, and then watch as I argued before the second highest court in the nation. The court ordered me to monitor the civil service and the Department of Army in terms of their abiding by the court's order, and to in fact report back to the court. And the interesting thing about this was because my father and I were both challenged in terms of our capabilities and mental abilities to be able to compete with whites. That was part of the defense in my case, part of the defense in my father's case. The court, however, found that we had been discriminated against, and my father had been retaliated in a degree that was really horrendous in terms of rebel flags being put in his office, being referred to as boy, Dixie being played when he walked into the office. And so the court ordered me not only to monitor, which I did, but the court went on to establish and enunciate very important principles. The first one was the first case in the nation, this was, to in fact find and award back pay through executive orders, because Title VII had not yet been finalized as it related to minorities working for the federal government. And secondly, it established the but-for test. Years thereafter, I'd walk into a federal courtroom or a federal hearing, and the court would say, "Mr. Pettit, do you have any connection with Pettit versus the United States?" And I would say with a smile on my face and very affectionate toward my father that yes, I was my father's lawyer. George D. Pettit was my client, and we'd go from there. So I had gone, and the book narrates how we went full circle in terms of me ending up being his attorney in the second highest court in the nation, the U.S. Court of Claims, in terms of monetary affairs. The Supreme Court later said if they had received Pettit, they would reverse it because only Congress can make law and not executive orders, which is something that's still being debated by President Obama today. However, that's the theme from which the book revolves, and from where it goes. Other than that, I had a lot of individual cases that I've handled over the years, which I felt would be of great interest to the reader. Cases involving civil litigation, Mike Tyson civil litigation with Ray Lewis, cases involving constitutional issues that went to the Court of Appeals, and some were briefed in the United States Supreme Court. But one of the also interesting aspects about the book is not only the Maryland history that's developed in the book, but the fact of my having the opportunity to run into, meet, and work with Jimmy Carter, being the first in the nation to be made a co-chairman for a presidential campaign for the state of Maryland, both in the primary and the general election, and rising up through his administration and my friendship and relationship with him when he tried to appoint me U.S. Attorney in Maryland, for Maryland, which would have been the first African American in the nation appointed for a state, which is we take for granted now because we have a black Attorney General. But at that time, that was unheard of, particularly in a sort of southern state of Maryland. And so my opposition did not come from the Republican Party. My opposition came from a Maryland senator, a progressive senator, Paul Sarbanes, and that did not happen. But the book goes through that political history and some other things that I have been involved in. Let me tell you the reason for the name of the book, Under Color of Law. I chose that name because historically, Under Color of Law came about as a result of the brutality that African American freed slaves were suffering back in the 1800s or after the Civil War. And President Grant was president of the United States, and President Grant went into Congress to in fact get legislation to protect the newly freed slaves from the abuses that they were suffering from officials. And this statute became 42 U.S.C. 1983. And that was approved and passed in 1871. It's called the Civil Rights Act of 1871, but it's also called the Ku Klux Klan Act because that gave the power of the president to send in federal troops and federal marshals to protect the rights of the newly freed slaves. And it also gave, under 42 U.S.C. 1983, it also gave us the power for monetary damages as it relates to deprivation of rights under color of law, meaning that those officials who would deprive or abuse or do whatever they were doing in terms of African Americans would be liable in federal court, both criminally as well as civilly, under 42 U.S.C., acting under color of law. And so that's where the title derives from. I write the book for two things, three things. Number one is the promise to my father. But number two is as an inspiration to young people throughout who have some difficulties, who have faced some difficulties in terms of their future. I hope the book is inspirational and lends itself to young people looking toward somebody that's fought through certain adversity. And the other thing is to warn and to alert the body politic of America that this is a young nation. The rights that we have achieved over the years can be easily reversed. The rights that we fought for and people died for can be easily changed, and we can very easily slip back into a regression and a system of negativism that we've fought so hard to come through as African Americans. And we have to be very careful. We have to be very, very vigilant to protect our rights. If we look now at a conservative Supreme Court, which is in fact taking away or trying to dismantle the Voting Rights Act, a conservative Supreme Court, which in fact is taking away and diluting affirmative action, a conservative Supreme Court which is attacking our rights on all fronts by a very thin 5-4 majority. If you look at what's happening in the criminal justice system in terms of draconian penalties, that in fact locking up young African American males at a disproportionate rates to other people. If you're looking at not only the criminal justice system as what's developing and taking place, but the economic system of America in terms of poverty, in terms of lack of jobs, we have to be very, very careful that we do not allow the negatives and the adversity that we faced before revisit us because of our comfort in the zone in terms of what we've achieved and what we believe is behind us. And so we have to be very, very protective. We have to be very, very vigilant. I want to show you a copy of the book. This is Under Color of Law. And the book can be ordered through iUniverse.com, www.iUniverse.com, which is in fact the publisher. The book can be obtained through Barnes & Noble, and the book can also be obtained through Amazon.com. Amazon.com, iUniverse.com, and Barnes & Noble. I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you will read the book, and I hope you will appreciate the messages that I am trying to convey, and I hope that the book gives you a better historical understanding of some of the issues in terms of the civil rights movement, where we have been, where we're going, and the vigilance that we have to pay to protect, in fact, our future. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy.